Springbok squad for the July test has been announced, folks. Springboks have already played one test, although that was outside of the international test window, so we saw a bunch of guys who were unavailable. Well, the test window open for July, and Ireland and Portugal are waiting. Rassie has had kind of free reign to select the guys he wants. We'll go through the squad, some of the kind of ins and outs, the standby list, the injury list, and you guys can let us know your thoughts. First impressions are, it's a pretty senior squad. I don't want to use the word old because people always associate old with like bad. But Rassie likes to pick senior guys. He's got faith seemingly more in some of the senior guys than maybe potentially some of the other coaches who after the World Cup kind of want to rotate some of the veterans out immediately. Andy Farrell is actually kind of very similar to Rassie in that regard. Both these coaches are less likely to rotate just for the sake of rotation. They want to win. And they want to keep the veterans in the camp. It's a little bit different from South Africa, from some other teams like New Zealand and England, who, when guys go abroad, they're no longer available for selection. The Boks are able to pick whoever they want. They don't have those kind of own internal rules. But there's certainly a few senior guys. Like the number of guys like 33 years and older, there's certainly a lot more than I think the other squads. There's not like any kind of 21-year-old, 20-year-old making an appearance. The youngest guy is 22. But the average age is a little bit higher. But likewise, the caps go up with that as well. As I mentioned, they've already played Wales. They gave them a bit of a walloping. They were able to blood a few guys in that game. And then with Ireland coming down to South Africa, the big guns are back. One game in Pretoria, one game in Durban, and then a third game up against Portugal from Bloemfontein. One would imagine we see a little bit more of an experimental side from the Boks in that third test. I would again imagine that against Ireland, which is a fascinating series because you got number 1 world champion South Africa against number 2 Six Nations champ Ireland going head to head. I mean, both these sides are going to go with the veterans. They're going to go with basically their first choice teams, I would think, based on how these guys have picked their sides in the past. But let's get to the sides, kind of some of the ins and outs. 4 hookers in Grobler, Marks, Mbonambi and Wessels. 2 of the uncapped Bulls guys make it into the squad. Maybe for Portugal, I would say at least one of them gets a cap. But with Malcolm Marks and Bongi Mbonambi, they've kind of been pretty hard to displace, barring injury. And it also probably puts the pecking order in terms of where Joseph Dweba is at in a bit of context. Remember, Dweba was kind of the next cab off the rank for a little while, but then his line-out throwing kind of came into a bit of question. And he kind of got surpassed by Dion Fourie in terms of that hooker pecking order. So, with him not being amongst those 4, he seems to be, just another notch down in the pecking order. I don't have a problem with that because I don't think Dweba kind of took the few chances that he was given with 2 hands. And I'm keen to see Grobler in particular get a go. But Dweba, to be fair, is still in the standby list, which is also pretty lengthy. You got 6 props in Dutoy, Koch, that's Thomas Dutoy, Malherbe, Inche, Inyekani, and Steenkamp. I mean, the props, there's some senior guys. The props tend to mature a bit later than some other guys, but you've got like Franz is 33, Vincent's 34, and Trevor's 35. So you got 3 of these guys who are getting up there in terms of the years. But as I said, props can go for a wee while, certainly more than the outside backs for the most part, although South Africa seem to be able to get more out of their outside backs in terms of their lifespan compared to some other teams. But that's a whole bunch of big South African bits of beef. Those guys are going to be looking to put some pressure on at scrum time. The main guy I was a little bit surprised, based on recent performances anyway, not to edge his way into the starting lineup, at least with the squad, was Wilco Lowe. But he is also in the kind of standby list. Remember, they were kind of scrummaging the house down in the URC just a few weeks ago, the Bulls guys. Locks, you got Etzebeth, Morat, Sneeman, Mostert. And then you got a guy like Ben Jason Dixon, who's probably a Lucy, but can play lock as well. Same with Peter Steff. But I would imagine it's those guys who are going to be in that second row for South Africa. 120 cap. Evan is a pretty hard man to displace. He maybe gets rested against Portugal. But again, he's 32. Mostert's 33. Morat is only 26, so he's the kind of youngest of that bunch, with Sneeman being 29. So I'm not sure who kind of the next guy, who's the next lock in South Africa that is due a call-up that's kind of a wee bit younger than these senior guys. It is hard. it is hard with the depth to kind of displace one of the existing guys. Loose forwards is also an area of strength, but it's pleasing to see at least one debutant amongst those ranks, potentially. So you got Ben Jason Dixon, like I mentioned, who got his cap against Wales the other day. You got Pepsi Buthelezi, who is the uncapped guy amongst the rest of the guys I'm going to read out. Dutoy, that's Peter Steff, Kolisi, Roos, Smith, Van Staden, and Visa. So all pretty familiar names. Most of these guys went to the World Cup. Kolisi is back in. Remember, he wasn't available for that Wales game, although he was there at the stadium. There's been a little bit of talk about him from his boss at Rassie, saying he's a little bit out of shape. I'm sure the Springbok's strength and conditioning people will get him into tip-top shape. But sometimes that happens when guys go to France. Look, I remember when Julien Savea went to France. He got criticised by his boss as well for not being kind of the physical specimen he'd been expecting when he kind of signed him. So maybe that's sometimes just a thing. But yeah, how the backline is structured is going to be a fascinating one because, I mean, Visa, number 8, Roos, number 8, Pepsi Buthelezi can play pretty much anywhere in their back row. Kolisi on the open side and Peter Steff on the blind side has tended to be the combo that's worked. There's no Dwayne Vermeulen anymore. So that maybe gives a little bit, that's probably what opens up for Evan Roos, I guess, because Visa was always in the squad. And then Van Staden, is always hard tackling and busting tackles himself. Quacker Smith, Mr. Super Sub. Yeah, I don't know. It's a really interesting one. I hope Pepsi gets a crack at Portugal, if nothing else. And as I said, we've seen Ben Jason Dixon get at least one go at test level thus far. So yeah, the average age of the forwards is like 29, which is slightly older. Like the All Black squad is like 27, so it's a little bit older. And as I said, there's a few guys there that kind of 33 years plus. Kolisi's 33. There's another one kind of getting up there in the years. Backs wise, 4 halfbacks in terms of de Klerk, Reinach, Van der Berg, and Williams. So good reward to see a Lions guy get into the squad. They've been playing some pretty exciting rugby. They have a couple of guys in the squad, which is pleasing with the kind of attractive rugby those guys have been playing. Again, I'm looking at Portugal for him. Reinach, I haven't seen him playing that much because I haven't been watching the top 14, so I'm not sure what form he's in at 34. Has he still got his pace that he used to have? De Klerk obviously played against Wales the other day, and then Grant Williams, speaking of pace, yeah, I like him as the guy who comes off the bench to run at some tired defenders personally. Other backs, Libok and Pollard as you kind of 10s, with Feinberg and Gomozulu as the kind of 10, 12, 15 cover. He came off the bench the other day, and really, I think probably with that performance from the bench is what cemented his spot on this side. Maybe the fact that he is versatile in his positions that he can cover as well. He's the youngest guy in the squad at 22, but man, he looked composed for a guy in his first test just last week. The midfield is all basically guys in their 30s. Then they're all the World Cup guys. I mean, Lucanio Arm, Damon De Allende, Jesse Creel, and then Andre Esterhuizen as well. These guys are 30, 30, 30, and 32, with De Allende being the oldest. So it's another one where you kind of wonder in 3-4 years how well these guys are going to be playing. But as I mentioned, like we tend to, at least in some parts of the world, write guys off basically once they've hit like 32. But some players, with the experience they gain, they don't maybe have the gas they used to have, but they've got more of that kind of rugby now. And then outside backs, Aronsa, it's good to see him fit. Remember, he was kind of drafted into that URC final, maybe not being 100%, but he's fit enough to get a Springbok's naming. Cheslin, Colby, Makazila, Mapimpi, Edwin van der Merwe, Afaleli Fassi, and Vili Leroux. Leroux is the oldest of the outside backs alongside Reinach at 34. Mapimpi's 33, but Mapimpi's another one of those examples about an outside back being able to go into their kind of late 20s, early 30s. It never happens in New Zealand. Maybe Ben Smith was like the last example of an outside back who went into his 30s. Yeah, once they hit 28 in New Zealand, they tend to get, they tend to either go abroad or they tend to get dropped. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, there's been a lot of jokes about Aronsa, Colby, and Van der Merwe being in the same team because they're all guys that play in headgear, all kind of hot stepping, quick players. I mean, Van der Merwe against Wales just looked the business, didn't he? Talking about guys who look composed. Man, you imagine your test debut. Not a bad way to start things. But yeah, average age of the backs is also 29. So certainly some experience here. And yeah, the injury list is also pretty extensive. I mean, Kitsoff's injured, Klein's injured, Diaka's injured, Hanekom was one of the kind of potential guys on his URC form. He's on the injury list. Damien Willemse, Jaden Hendrickse, Hinko van Feyck, Kane Moody. long injury list. And then the standby list is also a very long. Joseph Dweba, like I mentioned, Mkunu's there. Low is there, that's Vilko. Fushi is also there, so there's a bunch of kind of front rowers on the standby list. I wonder if some of these guys have been playing Curry Cup. I'm not sure. Van Heerden is there. Jean-Luc Dupria is there. And then Kumeri is also there in terms of loose forward cover. Jordan Hendrickson, who we saw play the other day, he's on the standby list. Kieran Horn, one of these Lions guys who's been setting the world alight. Also there, Sia Masuku. There was a lot of people kind of clambering for him to get into the Springbok squad, but not quite just yet. Hartzenberg is there. And Ethan Hooker, who I have to remind myself is not a hooker, he's a midfielder, is also there as well. It's a big squad, man. And the standby list makes it even longer. You kind of got to wonder who are the genuine omissions. I mean, Nohamba seems to be one, but he took a big shot to the head towards the end of the URC season, so I'm not sure if that's what's ruled him out. Ambrose Papia has been playing pretty well for the Bulls, but he seems to have fallen down the pecking order in terms of number 9s. Some of the guys playing in the Premiership, like Tyrone Green at fullback for Harlequins, has been playing all right. Augustus for Northampton has been playing all right, but you got a lot of good loosies, so I don't know. It's kind of, you spoiled for choice in some of these positions, aren't you? So, 3 tests. I think expectations-wise, they probably need to go 3 from 3. I know you got Ireland coming to town, and like the expectations when Ireland came to New Zealand 2 years ago that we would beat them. They beat us 2-1 in that series. It's kind of a pity that it's only 2 games. Like, you'd like a 3-match series. You don't want a drawn series potentially, but it's also good to get these teams like Portugal, going to South Africa. You got Georgia going to Australia. You got Fiji and New Zealand going to play over in the States. So it is good to see, some of the teams which don't necessarily always get these Tier 1 matchups some game time. But I would have liked Ireland against South Africa in a 3-game series. But it is 2 games. As I said, you're the world champions. You're at home. I still think the expectations are 2-zip. I think that's high expectations, but that's what it's got to be. You can't go into this series thinking you're going to go 1-1. Like for 1-1, I think for Ireland that'd be a good tour, because it's going to be tough down in South Africa. But I think the South Africans need to go 2-0, and then for Portugal, I think you need to change up the side, play some of the youngsters, and build that kind of bit of depth. But that's the Springbok squad for July. You guys let us know your thoughts. Who else do you think are kind of the guys who are unlucky with their omissions? Who do you think is potentially fortunate to be in the squad? Anybody that you would really like to see get a crack against Portugal based on this lot? Do you think the squad is too old, or do you kind of trust Rassie to kind of get the balance of the youth and the experience right? You guys let us know your thoughts, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.